Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Jessica, and thank you, Elysium Creative, for allowing this session to occur. My name is Cory Argenbright. I am the CEO of the new emerging Military Community Chamber of Commerce. I'm also a serial entrepreneur, U.S. Army veteran. Um, I have owned 7 businesses since transitioning out in '09. I currently own 4 businesses, or I'm the managing partner of 4 different businesses with my other partners. Um, we're excited to be here. We appreciate the invite to come and speak to you guys a little bit about the military culture and how it impacts the corporate world. I call it the veteran culture in a snapshot, just because we are limited on time and we could talk about this stuff for hours, especially me. This is something that I'm very, very passionate about. Um, so for today's session and in our agenda, we're going to cover a couple topics. We're going to look at some statistics in the veteran community when it comes to retention, which is very important, and of course hiring and selecting the right candidate. You want them to stick around. So we're going to look at those statistics, and there's some of those that I'm going to point out while we're going over those, so that you can see the correlation between understanding the culture of who you're hiring in your company and why this is important and why this plays an effect to the veteran retention statistics that are out there in the community. We're going to talk about standards having value, and how that whole culture of value and morals that are in the military community can play very well with the corporate sector, but sometimes get forgotten or they're not looked at in a way that provides value to a company when it really should. We're going to talk a little bit about the psychology of veterans in transition. And this is because a lot of the companies that I've worked with in the past as a consultant in the transition space, helping them set up veteran programs and veteran hiring initiatives and pipelines, they just don't seem to realize that there's a psychological aspect to the person that they're trying to hire. And this is very important when looking at the sociological and cultural conjoining of the military sector and the non-military sector. And then we're going to look at the military as an employer, so that as a company, you can kind of get an understanding of what did they have before that they're now leaving to come into your company. So it's almost like when you're competing company to company for the same talent pool, understanding your competition and where they're coming from and some of the benefits they had and opportunities they've had can give you a better understanding as a company what we bring to the table and how we compare and how we compete with those other companies. So jumping straight in, we're going to talk about veteran retention statistics. So right now, the numbers haven't changed over about the last 2 to 4 years. It's roughly fluctuating right in the same area. So 50% of all veterans leave their first post-military position within 12 months. And that's rough. 60 to 80%, depending on industry, leave their first civilian job before their second work anniversary. As a CEO, as someone who's a serial entrepreneur, I know that when I hire somebody, I need them to be with my company 2 to 3 years to see return on investment. So when you have a transition system with these types of statistics, there's some major issues that need to be looked at. And that's where this next slide comes into play. We're looking at the top 5 reasons veterans leave the organizations that they have joined in their first transition job after the military or post-military job. And these are very important. They leave for better jobs. Well, what's that really mean? Well, it's underemployment. That's a huge issue in the military community, whether you're talking about military spouses, veterans, dependents. So we definitely want to keep that in mind. That's one that I definitely like to talk about. Lack of career advancement. We're going to talk about that some more when we get into the culture. Quality of work. I think that's going to vary industry to industry, but it is on the top 5 list. Inadequate compensation. I think we can all kind of laugh at this one because I don't think there's a career or a job or a demographic anywhere in the world that doesn't want more compensation for the work they do. uh, and then the last one is position doesn't match skills and education. This again kind of goes back to the underemployment piece. I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time here in these statistics. Just going to kind of touch on them piece by piece a little bit and elaborate because I'm sure you're going to hear about them in some of your other sessions as well. The next piece we're going to look at is the top 5 changes that the veteran community has said that they would like to see that would have allowed them to stay. Increased salary and benefits, we've already talked about that. I think we can all say the same thing. We'd love to see higher salaries, better benefits in the corporate sector. I'm challenged with that all the time as a CEO is how do I make sure that I'm able to maintain profits and do what needs to be done for our stakeholders, stockholders, our boards of directors that we've put into place that allows us to continue being innovative when it comes to salary and benefits. But that's an issue across the board. Increased opportunities for advancement is a big piece, and we're going to talk about that a little bit later on in the seminar. The quality of work again comes into play. This comes really from the culture, and we're going to talk about that in more detail. Work environment and culture as a whole. So a lot of veterans that are transitioning and going to their first job, they don't ever feel like they've actually become a member of the culture. And we're going to look at that and how we can maybe look at bringing them into our culture in a way that's more understandable for them. And then satisfaction with management. And I won't touch on that. That can be a whole separate seminar all on itself. So I won't touch on that today. So let's talk about the veteran culture, where values mean something. Values have significance. So I have on the screen here a list of military values. And these military values is a combination of values from all the different branches of services. Loyalty, duty, respect, honor, integrity. I'm sure if you are in the corporate sector, whether you're a CEO, a hiring manager, a supervisor, in the human resources space, you can look at this list and find several values that are in the military community and in the military branches and tie them to your company and your own company's values. And that piece that you're seeing up here is very, very important because in our culture, in the military culture, our values for our branch are beaten into us. I mean, I literally will say they are beaten into us. When you're going through boot camp, you're going through officer basic course. If you can't remember your core values and you can't remember their definitions and you're not living those core values, you are going to suffer. I'll share a little story. I was in basic training at Fort Leonard Wood for the Army, and it was maybe week 2, and they were hammering us with the core values. And I just could not get our 7 core values down. I could not get the list done right. I couldn't put it in the right order. And I probably did 500 to 700 push-ups over the course of a week. Not to mention getting rolled around in the sandbox and being turned into what we call a sugar cookie because you're sweating and coated in sand. Looks like you've got sugar granules all over you. And so that's one of those things that the values are beaten into us. And I say that with true integrity. I'm going to pause for just a second. I've got a question already in here. And it says, why do we paint leaving a job as a bad thing? Difficult to gauge company culture fit from the get-go, and there's better offers that come along later. Absolutely. And we're going to talk about this a little bit, NOR, when we get into a little bit of the psychology of the culture. And it's not necessarily a bad thing that you're leaving for a better job. But a lot of this comes from that psychology that we're going to talk to. So I'm going to hold your question off for just a few more minutes, and then we'll get back to it. And you'll see kind of where we're going with that and why it's on the top of the list and kind of considered a bad thing, using air quotes here. Now, again, we talked about the military values, and I showed you that list. And now here are some of the top values in the corporate world, uh, in this little picture to the right. And I want you to see if you can see the similarities. Right off the jump, there's a big one right in the center: integrity, which is on both lists. And this understanding is a great joining force when you are looking at hiring from the military community, especially transitioning veterans, that hiring managers and human resources staff doing initial interviews and trying to get an understanding of the candidate. You can use your company values where they tie into the military branch values and use that as a joining force to show where there is continuity, because a resume may not always show it. So getting to understand this culture difference, but actually a cultural similarity, can be that joining force to help an interview go better, help you get a better understanding of the potential candidate and potential employee that you're looking at. So think about this as you're looking at your own company, and kind of holding the mirror up and saying, okay, what are our values? Who are we as a culture, as an environment? And this is a selling point for a lot of companies, is look at us as a culture. Look at us as this is who we are. This is how we give back to the community. This is how we identify ourselves. I'll give you a for example. I'm here in San Antonio, and there's a big company here called Rackspace. And I went to an event that they were holding for veteran hiring. And the big pitch they had was, look at our culture. Look at how much fun we have. We have a slide that goes from this floor to this floor, that you don't have to take the elevator or the stairs. You can ride the slide. And these things were what they were utilizing to create a connection with the military community, is looking at their core values and their environment and their culture, and trying to tie it back to the culture and the values of the military, and trying to show the uniqueness of themselves and their competitors in the space, by having a slide. So that was a competitor value. But they had things like integrity, they had loyalty, they had selfless service, where they gave back to the community and they talked about these things and how they did it, and how you could get involved if you were an employee to give back to the community. And these are very important aspects for the military transitioning service member. So now we're going to kind of talk about your question here when we talk about the psychology. So a lot of transitioning service members are in a psychological state due to the massive cultural and sociological shift that they're going through, what we call taking off the uniform. The longer you've been in the military, the harder this can become. And if you are a veteran or a military spouse, you've probably seen this, gone through this, or are going through this. And it causes psychological distress. The other thing as a company that we have to understand about who we're hiring and their psychology as we're going through the hiring process is, because of this cultural and sociological change that this service member is going through, there is fear, there is worry, there's insecurity, and there's potential mental health issues depending on that service member's combat experiences, deployments, and things of that nature. Although these numbers will start going down over the next few years, as we've now pulled out of Afghanistan and are limiting deployments to Iraq and things of that nature, it is still something within the community that we're still seeing with our combat veterans. But this goes back to your question here. Why do we paint leaving a job as a bad thing? Well, the issue is that because of the fear and the worry, that psychological distress that the veteran is going through during this cultural and sociological shift. They fear the loss of the security that they've had in their time in service. So a lot of them will jump on the very first job that comes their way. And this leads to underemployment as well. So when, as a company, when we're looking at hiring someone, we have to understand what's their real skill. Are they really overqualified for this? Are they going to stick around? If I'm hiring a veteran that is 20 years service for an entry level position, they're not going to stay. They're not going to have that cultural the culture that we have. They're going to look at that and go, okay, I'm going to start at the entry level, but with all my skills, all my education, everything else, I should be a manager within 6 to 12 months. And when that's not happening, because we don't the culture in the non-military sector, just you don't move that fast, and that can cause issues. So that's why we paint this almost in a bad way, because companies don't want to spend the money to train a new employee and have them leave within 12 months, even if they're leaving for a better job. We don't want that as a company. So we've got to look at this in how do we attract the right veteran to the right job. And I'm sure some of the other seminars that are going on are going to talk about this. But let's talk about some of these other psychological issues: the fear, the worry, the insecurity. We touched a little bit when I was answering the question there about the loss of the paycheck. If any of us have ever gone through any kind of transition from one job to another, a company shuts down on us, a company does cutbacks, and now we're left in this unemployment space where we were used to having this paycheck. The vast majority of our society does live paycheck to paycheck, or they have a minimal amount of savings that are going to get them through. And we struggle with financial literacy as a society as a whole. And a lot of us are not set up to be able to handle a 3, 4, 6 month long transition process from one job or career to the next. So this drives a lot of fear. It drives a lot of worry. And so with that being the case, we find that in our society, in our culture, in the community, that we take the first thing that comes. And as a company, we want to not be someone who advocates for that. And this is where understanding this culture and this fear and this worry, if someone's coming in and applying for a job that they're underqualified for, it may take a little extra work on our end as a company to maybe look at that and go, you're not really a good fit for this entry level position, but we do have this management position that we think you could be a good fit for. And this is where your human resources managers, your human resource generalists, your hiring managers, having an understanding of the culture, the society, the psychological process that a transitioning service member is going through can be beneficial. And having that education, if you are going to set up a transitions system or pipeline for your company to bring service members in, this education is important, because it's going to help you as a company, for one, because you're going to find someone who's going to stay longer because they're not underemployed. So they're not going to leave for a better job. And two, it helps your managers, which we saw in the statistics, satisfaction with management, get a better understanding of who's coming onto their team. Who are they bringing into the company? And what are the issues that we may deal with when we're bringing them into the team to help them get through this? And it's not because they deserve to be helped or that we owe them to be helped. That's not the case. But if you are a team leader, you are a supervisor, you are a manager, part of your job that any company's brought you onto is to help your team. So if you feel they're going to be a good asset to your team and you're going to spend the company's money to hire them, understand what you may need to do as their manager, as their team leader, to say, okay, I know there are probably going to be some struggles here, and I might need to take a little extra time to understand who I've got on the team, what do they bring to the team, and how do I utilize my knowledge, my experience, our company values to tie this to this veteran or this service member that's come in and work with them. So this is what this really means for you as an employer and understanding the veteran psychology. Now, another piece of the psychology and of our culture is in the attraction piece. Like when you're trying to bring someone into your company, do us a favor. Please don't use insulting photos. I'm sure you'll probably see a similar slide to this in other seminars, but I have to always talk about this when we're talking about culture and the psychology. When we in the military community see an ad from a company who's trying to hire and bring veterans into their corporation, and you've used a stock photo, such as this one that says 1 year EMBA program, and the service member you're showing obviously is out of regulations with their goatee there, it shows us, it tells us as a community, maybe you don't really understand who we are. And with that being the case, you may not be a good fit for me, because if you haven't taken the time to understand me and my who we are as a community, and who we who we are as a culture, it's almost becomes a piece of an offensive material, and it will drive veterans and military community away from your company. So take into, I know there's a lot of marketing people that help human resources develop these types of things and whatnot. Work with your marketing department. Understand the culture of who you're coming through. Uniforms are very important to us. Our appearance is very important to us while we're active duty. Again, it's part of our culture. It's part of our society. And so a complete off-brand, offshoot stock photo done by someone who knows nothing about our culture, it can be detrimental to your program as a company. And so I like to throw this slide up there and just let you know, if you've done this or your company is putting something together and you take a look at the marketing material, I hope this slide resonates with you from this seminar, and you're able to really bring to your company this little piece of education to say, let's not insult the people we're trying to bring into our company with this stock photo. There are a lot of great people out there, veteran-owned photography businesses, free source governmental photographs that can be utilized, that are going to show your appreciation. And because these people are within regulation, within the changes that we know have to be done, we know that a uniform cannot be 100% accurate in a photo that is used for commercial purposes. We know that. But those things are very important to us as a society and a culture. And as a company looking to hire from our culture and our community, please, that little bit can go 100 miles down the road to make you more successful. So let's talk about the military as an employer. This is probably the biggest piece for a company to really think about when you're looking at hiring from the military community, and especially from veterans. Understanding what you are against. Now, most of these ladies and gentlemen, they've decided to get out for whatever reason. They are retiring, and just understanding who they're leaving for whatever reason is good is good knowledge. But there are service members out there who may have a year or 18 months left on their ability to re-enlist, and they want to test the market. A lot of them want to try to find a job prior to leaving, and that alleviates some of those psychological distresses of them leaving. So understanding who you're competing with as a company, not just it's a military branch, but who it is as a company. Looking at it from a corporate perspective is going to help you identify, how do we compete? So something that is probably not something you can compete with as a singular company. The military has 800 career paths, if not more by now. This data is about 2 years old. So there could be more career paths now, especially with the Space Force coming along. So there's 800 career paths. And within the military, once I've done my first contract, I've completed my first tour of duty, I can change my career path. I can move. I can do something different. So it's good to understand that there's a good possibility that they can stay within the military and do something new. And the next piece there that you'll read, the 55% of service members are or like to pursue career paths outside of what they did in the military occupational specialty. That's very important as a company to understand. So when you get a resume in for someone who was infantry or military police or a medic or a tank operator, and they're applying for a job that is not combat related in a company, of course, that is not going to war, understand they are looking for a new career path. They are looking to pursue a whole new market. So the vast majority of the resumes you're going to get, 55%, the majority of the resumes you're going to get probably have not done the job you're hiring for in a direct way. And I hope that makes sense. And if it doesn't, let me know and I'll try to clarify that a little more as we move on. So what are some of what are the benefits? Well, ingenuity, ambition, drive, those are all rewarded in the military. You cannot gain rank. You cannot move through the rank structure of the military if you are not driving your education, volunteering in your community, putting forth your sacrificing time with your own family to go to schools that the military wants you to go to, sacrificing time with your friends and your loved ones and the holidays to go and be the person to volunteer for a special duty. These things are rewarded not just in that promotion sector, they're rewarded through actual awards. And when those things happen, those people come to the top of the list and they get better duty stations, they get better opportunities within the military. And from a corporate perspective, we talk about wanting to reward and promote within and things of that nature. But yet, a lot of times, low level managers look at this as a threat. It's a threat to their position if someone below them is showing ambition and they're going out of their way to be better and they're sacrificing time at home. And this comes back to the cultural piece, understanding that's our culture, that's who we are, that's what we do. And as a company, as a CEO, I will tell you that's what I want in my company. I want people to have ambition. I want people to go out and try to improve themselves and be willing to sacrifice to help my company become better, because revenue driving is my job as a CEO. I've got stakeholders and investors I've got to answer to, and I've got to pay back. I got loans I have to pay back. And the way I do that is by driving more revenue. And if I drive more revenue and I have more profits, now I can give back to my employees more. And those are the types of people I want, because they're going to drive innovation within my company. And I'm not going to be stagnant. But a lot of times we see in the corporate non-military sector where these traits are looked at in a negative light, because if I'm a manager and I've been with a company 10 years and now I brought someone in who's 6, 8, 12 months into their employment here, and they're learning how to do my job, and they've learned how to do my job, and they're taking the initiative, and they're volunteering to do things that would be at my level, I could become threatened. And as a company, we want to educate and change that mindset. And some of the other seminars that you're going to see throughout the course of the next 2 days are going to talk about ways to address these. So I won't go into detail on them. But as a fellow employer, these are things the military is going to do. They're going to reward these activities. So attraction is another thing that the military does very, very well. All right. They attract from all types of demographics. They attract from all types of pieces of societies. 70% of transitioning service members do not have a degree of any sort. And only 30% have at least an associate's or above. So they're bringing in high school graduates all the time. And they love it because they train their workforce. They put in the time, the money, the effort to put in training programs. They're going to take someone with a high school education and put them in a position where they're making decisions at the age of 19, 20, 21 that are going to influence millions of dollars of taxpayer money, the lives of the people around them. And although it's not as maybe critical in the non-military sector that people are making decisions that are life or death, but the value of that someone can make that critical command decision and they've been trained to do so. That's part of our culture. And so when you're looking at putting your job description together and one of your requirements, not a recommendation, one of your requirements is a bachelor's degree, you're looking at cutting out 70% of the transitioning service members right off the jump because they won't even make it through your computer audit. And you are losing an ability to look at people that have years and years of experience. And that goes into the next little point that you're seeing in the slide. What's the civilian equivalency of someone with a service member? Within 4 to 6 years of being in the military, if you are an average military service member, within your first contract, 4 to 6 years, you will be a first line supervisor. You will have subordinates. Whether you are a college degreed officer or you are a high school degreed or GED degreed enlisted or woman, you will have subordinates. You may not have many, but you will have. I will touch on this in just a minute. Another question came in. Actually, we'll hold off on it until we get to the Q&A, which will be here in just a few moments. 6 to 12 years, you're a mid-level supervisor. 12 to 18, you're a senior level supervisor. 18 plus or 16 plus, you're an executive level decision maker in the military. Whether you're on the officer side or the enlisted side, you are an executive, policy driving, policy writing decision maker. And as a company, we need to understand that. These ladies and gentlemen transitioning out with these types of years of experience that you're going to see on their resumes should automatically be able to correlate in your mind as a hiring manager or as a recruiter what that person's ability is civilian equivalent management wise and leadership wise. And this slide right here looks at this a little bit from a college degree versus military experience. A lot of people, Elon Musk being one of them, doesn't even care about a college degree. A lot of companies out there look at college degree, or a lot of industries out there are looking at college degrees going, you're not training them to do the job anymore. Well, guess what? Military service, you're trained to do your job. Many college graduates never held a job. They don't understand what the workforce is. And if they have held a job, it may have been a part-time restaurant job, and they probably don't really understand what the corporate world really looks like. Whereas within the military, it's all career development. You have your job and you start getting trained, and the day you finish training and you've got that certification and you are what we call MOS, or military occupational specialty qualified, you are doing your job. You know what it's like to be in a company and in a team and actually have work experience, the work ethic that's needed, how hard you have to push and drive. So there is a lot of value in a military service member. So think about that when you're writing up those job descriptions as a company. Do I really need someone with a college degree to do this job? Or does work experience matter? Which has more value nowadays? Based on a lot of research out there, the experience matters. And that is part of who we are in the military community. We are work experience. We are work ethic. And then the last piece is work stability. The corporate sector is no longer the show loyalty to the company shows loyalty back to you. That's not who it is anymore. It's not the corporate world anymore. Kip mentioned it in the opening session, if you happen to be in there, that 40, 50 years ago, you could get a job with a company and stay with them for 30, 40, 50 years. And it's not something you see very often anymore. Well, in the military, you do, because you're signing a contract. You're saying, I'm giving you 4, 6, and even if you go what they call indefinite after doing 10 years, could be another 10 years of your life that you've said, I'm going to go work for you. And they're saying, you know what, as long as you follow our rules and you obey what we tell you you need to obey, you've got a job. And we're going to pay you every 2 weeks. We're going to give you health, dental, optical benefits for you and your family. We're going to give you life insurance. We're going to allow you to pay for life insurance for your family. We're going to give you a retirement plan. We're going to give you 401k, which is now known as the TSP. We're going to give you the ability to go and get an education. So we're going to go and give you tuition reimbursement, or pay for your tuition while you're active duty. So these are benefits that are in the corporate sector. There are companies that do educational reimbursement. There are companies that have 401k IRA matching. There are companies that have PTO. So when you're looking at this as an employer, PTO, for instance, in the military is 2.5 days earned every 2 weeks, roughly. You get paid twice a month, so it's 24 paychecks. So you get 2.5 days, 24 times a year. What's your company offer? Is it equivalent? Is it close to it? Does it even touch it? Something else you might want to understand. Retiring service members, more often than not, do not want your healthcare, your dental, your optical in the corporate world, because they have a better package due to their benefits from retiring. And with that being the case, you may want to be able to negotiate and have in your back pocket as a company, what can I offer them instead? Can I offer them more PTO? Can we get that approved? As a CEO, I approve that. My hiring mechanism when I'm hiring from a retired military, if they tell me, and we even ask them up front, are you planning on using our healthcare benefits? Because if not, to make your benefit package more better and competitive, we're going to offer you more PTO. So as a company, you want to understand the benefits where these veterans are coming from, to sit there and understand, okay, how do I compete with other companies? And if I've been educated as a company through seminars like this or hiring consultants, you can. So with that, we're going to go into the Q&A portion, which there was a question I pushed off till now. says, I keep hearing about the reluctancy of companies to bring in retired military into mid-level to senior roles because they don't have corporate civilian experience, and the military is different than corporate America. So you are correct. A lot of companies in the non-military sector, just like we talked about this whole seminar, they don't understand where you came from. And so I use this analogy. It's one that I learned from an HR manager that was a mentor of mine during my transition. If I have two resumes and I'm an HR generalist, 22-year-old HR generalist, and I have two resumes that made it through the computer, and one graduated from the University of Texas, where I graduated and got my bachelor's degree in human resources, and another one is a retiring military service member, and I have less than 10 minutes to to read through resumes and make a decision on who's going forward and who am I going to call and who am I going to talk to about setting up a further interview. That military service member's resume, I don't understand most of it. And even if you've gone through translation work with nonprofits and things of that nature, a lot of times there's things they just don't understand. So they look at that UT grad and they know exactly what UT is. They know exactly what those courses are because they went there. They went through that college. It's easy for them. So you get pushed to the wayside. And then if by chance you're retiring and you've made it through that piece and you're actually sitting with a hiring manager, they don't understand the difference that that there's no difference in the leadership and the management piece. They don't understand that we as a military and as a military industrial complex, call it that, we are a company. We are a corporation. The Army, the Navy, the Marine Corps, the Air Force, the Space Force, the Coast Guard, they are all companies. They are corporations. We have day-to-day paperwork that has to be done. We have administrative rules that we have to follow. We have to follow human resources rules. We have to follow OSHA rules. We have to deal with mechanical issues on vehicles if we have a fleet. We have to worry about equipment issues. We have to worry about technology issues. We have to send emails. We have to go to briefings. We have to go to meetings. We have to set presentations. We have to do PowerPoint presentations and get programs bought off on by senior management. And that translation piece, gets lost a lot of time because all the corporate world really sees about the military side is what they read in newspapers and what they see from Hollywood. They think we're all gunslingers. We're out there blowing stuff up, charging up hills. A lot of people who have never been in the military community as a dependent or a spouse or been around the military and other veterans, they have no idea that you go to work in the military wearing that uniform and 90% of your day, 90% of your time in the military will be spent doing the same exact thing they do, going to work Monday through Friday, 9 to 5. Even with combat tours under your belt, most of your career was doing the same exact stuff they did. Managing schedules, dealing with employee issues, looking at problems and solving them. So although it is one of those things where, yes, there is a reluctance because there's just a lack of education. And seminars like these help with that. So I hope a lot of the companies that are seeing this and seeing some of the other seminars that are going to be going on over the next 2 days will start being able to make those changes. So I hope that kind of explained from a corporate perspective to answer your question.
Cory, there was one other question there about leaving jobs. Why do we paint leaving a job as a bad thing? It's difficult to gauge company culture fit from the get-go, or if there's a better offer that comes along later.
Absolutely. So if I'm when I look at this from a veteran going to a company, one of the first questions I always ask during the interview process is, tell me about your company values and how you live them and how they affect how the company operates and how you operate as a manager or whatever the position they may be in. And the reason I do that is because, again, during the seminar, I talked about a lot of companies don't utilize their own values and look at that as a bridging piece where they can lead that conversation to create a system that is able, an interview process or even a cultural fit to start bringing that cultural connection for the service member as they enter the company or go through the interview process. So I used to ask that question. And then when I would get hired, I would go and do what we did in the military. I would go and learn their values, the company's values and the company's cultures. How do they define that? And what do they define them as? And you can learn this a lot in the orientation training for most companies. And I would bring up discussions in that training. And I would try to tie that back to my military service and the values that we had in the military and utilize those to embed myself into their culture. And so it's still a two-way street though, right? You still have buy-in from the company to actually live by their own core values that they put out. And there's a lot of companies that sadly they claim their values, but when you really look at them, they don't follow them. And so that's where a lot of that disconnect comes from is if I come in when I come into a company as a veteran or when veterans come into a company and they see core values that are like loyalty and integrity and things of that nature, and then when they actually see the day-to-day operations of their management, their leadership, and they're not following the values, that's where that disconnect and never feeling like they're a part of the culture comes together. So I hope that answered the question. So can I post the website for my company? What I will do is I will give you my LinkedIn. My company and the Military Community Chamber websites are both under construction at this point in time. We're revamping our company websites, so they're down right now. But I'll make sure that everybody gets my LinkedIn. So I'll make sure to do that for everybody.
If there are any other questions, feel free to submit those there in the chat. There's also a Q&A little section that you can also submit questions in as well. And then in just a few minutes here, Cory's going to step out into the lounge. So if you haven't had a chance to check out the lounge yet, you'll essentially exit this session when it's completed, and then you'll be able to go sit down at one of the virtual tables there. You can chat with Cory one-on-one or in a small group setting and ask any other questions that you have. Our next session will be getting started here in a little over 10 minutes. So if anybody has any final questions, go ahead and submit those now. Alrighty, guys, if that is all, we would like to say thank you so much to Cory for this amazing presentation. This has been really great information today. We've seen a lot of comments come in through the chat saying thank you, that this has been a great topic of discussion today. So I'm going to go ahead and end this session. Again, if you guys will pop on out to the lounge, Cory will be out there to answer any other follow-up questions that you might have. You can also take this as an opportunity to go network with some of your fellow attendees as well. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you again, everybody, for attending. Thank you, Jessica and Elysium, for letting us be here and be a part of this. We appreciate it.